There's no perfect process yet. There's always some type of waste in there, so that you can always think of some way to improve the process.
Welcome to the Voices of Manufacturing, where people share their stories, career journeys, and perspectives on the industry. This podcast is brought to you by Dozuki, empowering the frontline manufacturing workforce. And now, here is your host, Name Tag Scott.
Welcome back to another episode of the Voices of Manufacturing podcast. I'm your host, Name Tag Scott, and you are in for a treat today. Our guest is a testament of embracing technology, leadership, and innovation. He began his career on the technical front lines as an automation engineer at Colgate Palmolive. He eventually became global supply chain manager there, later went on to work at Walmart e-commerce. And in the last few years, he's also worked at a variety of tech companies as director, product engineering, and now most importantly as the VP of product here at Dozuki. Please welcome Alan Yeung.
Thank you for having me on, Scott.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Where did you grow up, Alan?
So I grew up in a small town called Baldwin. It's in New York, actually. So it's a small suburb in Long Island.
In Long Island. Does Long Island have factories and manufacturing facilities out in that part of the city?
Historically, it had a big impact on the world of aviation and flight, right? Especially during the World War II era.
Yep.
It was actually called like the cradle of aviation because during World War II they had a lot of military aircraft production, and if you fast forward to the space race and NASA's race to the moon, there was actually a company in Long Island that built the lunar excursion module that Neil Armstrong stepped out of. That was the thing that actually landed on the moon.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then that was it made history for Long Island.
Do you remember when you were growing up on Long Island if manufacturing was a thing? Did people talk about it? Was it part of your life?
No, it wasn't that prevalent because manufacturing is always behind the scenes. Usually, it's pretty funny too. There was a couple of other manufacturers when I was doing some research for the show. Arizona iced tea is actually made in Long Island.
I didn't know that either.
You would think it'd be made in Arizona, but actually it's made in Long Island.
Those lying bastards. All this time. I grew up in St. Louis, and it was very prevalent growing up because we had Anheuser-Busch, we had Nestle Purina, and then we had Boeing, or at the time McDonnell Douglas became Boeing. It was everywhere. It was beer, it was dog food, and it was airplanes, and it was a big manufacturing town.
Nice. Yeah. Like I really love manufacturing and being able to see things being produced and seeing the finished product.
Yeah.
And even going up to consumers and being able to see the impact of it on your consumers, which is from start to finish, it's really a amazing thing.
When you were growing up, did you have dreams of a manufacturing career?
So I had tendencies when I was young. I really liked to build things and hack things together.
Cool.
I remember one point during my high school years, I actually ran a computer repair shop out of my parents' restaurant.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you've seen these shows of like how it's made.
Yeah.
I used to watch all of them all the time. It was like one of my favorite TV shows. And then that was really what got me interested in manufacturing. Wow, like you can like because everything, if you think about it, everything that you use today has gone through some sort of manufacturing process.
Right. I got to ask about this. So, all right, you're running this business out of your parents' restaurant. They know about it, right?
Yeah, of course. They know. I had to work in a restaurant too, but it's also my side hustle.
So, are you taking your lunch break to fix things working at the restaurant? Like, I have to know how this operation worked.
So I was off on the weekends. So then I would schedule repair sessions with my customers over the weekend. So I would work in my parents' restaurant throughout the weekdays.
It's amazing.
And then, you always get to fix like the weirdest things, like a Windows, like a 95 desktop with all this parts. You're like, wow, what do I do here? And then I fixed things from like DVD players to VCR players at the time. That was a huge thing that those things work all the time.
Now, did you have enough internet access where you could go online to learn stuff, or are you doing this straight in the moment?
Brought me a really expensive computer at the time. I using it for a while, and I'm using it to get on the internet. And then one day the modem craps out. At the time, we had modems.
Of course.
And I brought it to a computer repair shop. And at the time, it cost like $100, which back in then, it was like wow, a lot of money. And then all he did was reboot it, format it, and then I got it back. Okay, it started working. But 2 weeks later, it broke down again.
Yeah.
And then I'm going back to the guy and say, hey, this broke. It's only been 2 weeks. I have to repair it again. It's going to cost you another $100. And at that point, I was like, no, let
Hey,
me take it back and then let me see what I can do with it. I remember I was going through the magazines, and then there was a magazine on how to fix your computer.
nice.
From there, it just got me hooked, and I just kept on reading about it. And then the feeling when I was able to take that knowledge and then actually repair my first computer, I was hooked.
It's the best. The original work instructions that you read in the
Yeah,
magazine.
yeah, exactly. The magazines.
How long did you run this business out of the restaurant?
Oh god, it was only for a year or so.
That's awesome.
But it was at that time. Now I look back, it was definitely a little bit shady because you're just like a kid going to some random person's house
Yeah,
trying to fix their computer. I'm
it's
like,
fantastic.
yeah.
Well, don't feel bad. What my version of that when I was in high school, we had a descrambler on our cable system, so we got the cool movie channels,
Mhm.
HBO and Showtime and stuff. So I would record all of Pulp Fiction, all the cool movies that were out. I'd record them illegally and then sell them and make copies. So
Yes.
we'd have two VCRs with the
Yep.
coaxial cables, and we'd dub copies. We'd sell them, and we made hundreds of dollars for a year. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of innovation comes from these enterprising young kids who try to. I did the same thing with like DVDs, right? I had a DVD burner and then
Yeah.
had it going.
Oh, tell me about some of the other jobs you had as you moved past the restaurant fix-it world.
So my first job after I graduated college, it was in manufacturing, as you mentioned, in Colgate Palmolive,
Right, right.
and it was as a controls automation engineer. It was, I would say, probably the most amazing job out of college because I was
Yeah,
traveling half the time
cool.
to all these different places around the world. So like when you're right out of college, you get this experience of the entire world,
Yeah.
and I was responsible for building factories across the world.
Wow.
Unfortunately, obviously, these in manufacturing locations, they were not great locations, but
Of course
usually
not.
you will fly to a country and then live in a decent area of the city, but then you have to travel like an hour or two to a
Right.
industrial area to build a factory. But
What
it was,
cities are, give me some examples. What are some of the places you went?
yeah, so some of the places that I went, there was a lot of places in China where Colgate was expanding at that time. It was in Thailand, India, Poland, France, Brazil, Mexico. Like it was all over, man. And
Wild.
it was such a amazing experience to experience all the different cultures and the different conditions, and you had to make these things work in these areas, and then bring technology to people who may never have even seen it before or
Uh,
have experience with using it, right? These are really complex automation systems
mm.
that we're building. We're building toothpaste, soap, and even pet food at the time too, so it was really cool.
I would love to hear like a snapshot or two of one of those moments where you're in a factory in Thailand or China or Poland. Any stories come to mind?
It was, I would say, my first, like the first experience that I had is probably the strongest. So it was my first job, and I remember I had to travel to Wisconsin
Mhm.
to inspect this what we call a motor control center, and then you're inspecting all the drives and all of that. And it was literally maybe only 4 weeks into my job, and I was supposed to be going with my mentor at that time, and then during the weekend he called me. I was like, "Oh, actually, I'm going on vacation, so you'll be fine by yourself."
Nice.
I fly to Wisconsin, and then I almost break down in tears because I think
Oh,
I'm gonna get fired. I had no idea how to do the job,
oh,
but luckily, there's this wonderfully nice lady who is in charge of installing all the panels and doing all the wiring for the motor control center.
hmm.
And she's, honey, like, what's going on? Like, oh, I'm here to inspect this thing, but I have no clue how to do it. And she's, oh, I've seen you guys around here before. And then she walks me like through this entire procedure from, she's doing all the wiring, and I'm supposed to be checking her work.
Yeah.
So she's walking me through how to check it and everything. And that was the most amazing experience there. And then once we had that, so basically what we were doing was we're building these motor control centers from in the US and then shipping them in complete parts over to China.
Oh,
And
wow.
all they did was take them off the ship, plop it into the factory, and then they'll be ready to go.
Whoa.
Because all you need to do is hook in the power and then hook up the wires, and all the wiring is done. So
Huh.
especially in those remote areas, in kind of new industrial developments, you didn't have the technical expertise and the labor to do all the wiring and the
Right.
equipment assemblies locally. So what we had to do was build it in the U.S. and then ship it over to China. I
Wow.
remember when we were first starting up the machine, it was the machine to, it's called a post addition skid. So basically, the idea here is, and a little background behind toothpaste is that the different colors don't mean anything.
What?
Yeah.
All this time?
So I was in charge of building a machine that injects different types of color or different types of flavor into the toothpaste, but in actuality, they're all the same. They just taste different and look different.
So wait, hang on. So you're telling me that my Crest liquid gel spearmint strip that I
Yeah.
love so much, that's not actually doing anything for my oral health?
No, they're all pretty much the same ingredients. You ever see the Aquafresh with the three colors and that?
Yeah.
And you say, you think that the first white layer is doing something and the green layer is doing something, the rest of no, they're all the same toothpaste, just different colors.
Oh, I sneaky jerks.
Yeah, but I remember the first time I was starting up the machine, and then again, like maybe 2, 3 months on the job, I have no idea what I'm doing. And then I'm going through the code and we're programming it up. And then we have a process engineer who designs all the chemical processes,
Yep.
and then he's in charge of making sure that all the machines work together. And I'm just in charge of making the program work. So he says, "Okay, start up the machine." And I click on the start button, and you hear the woo, and you hear boom, and then I look around me. Everyone is covered in lime green toothpaste.
Oh my
And then I hear from the back, "Stop the machine." And yeah, that was my first experience. So, luckily, I didn't get fired after that. I
Oh my
actually
God.
was able to get it to run, and then I got a promotion after that, and then the rest is history. But
Wow.
I remember that. So training is extremely important.
Wow. I guess it relative to the potential things you could have sprayed all over you in a manufacturing
Yeah,
facility, I guess toothpaste isn't the worst thing,
yeah,
right?
toothpaste wasn't the worst.
Oh
Yeah,
God.
the pump ran at 100%, and it just caused this immense back pressure, and then toothpaste sprayed everywhere. I was like,
Incredible.
"Whoops."
It makes me think of this scene in Willy Wonka when he's on that big machine that's spraying the foam everywhere. Like, that was you. First job.
But can you imagine it though? What you have programmed
Right.
and mocked up is happening in real life. Like because like we
Right.
used to design these human HMIs, which is human machine interfaces. So it's a graphical representation, like just like a video game on the screen. But you're actually then sitting 2 feet away from the machine that's actually doing the exact same thing that is happening on
Right.
your screen. And then during that time, I saw the pressure building up, like, oh crap, and then just blew up.
And you worked for Colgate for quite a while.
Yeah, I worked for Colgate for about 12 years. I even took an expat position in the factory in China for about 3 years. And at that time, I was actually traveling back and forth between China and India. We were building a
Oh,
new facility there,
whoa.
state of the art and everything. Really just amazing opportunity that I had.
I guess after 12 years, you weren't inclined to leave manufacturing. It sounds like you stuck it out and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, sometimes automation gets a bad rap, but for me, I see it as automating what we call the 3 Ds, right? The dark, dirty, and dangerous. And then it's really the task that no one really wants to do. You don't want to be in like a tunnel and trying to fix things and stuff like that, or
Right.
trying to diagnose what's wrong with it. So I see automation as a way for people to become more focused on more creativity, more higher level and added tasks.
Yeah.
Let the automation take care of the dark, dirty, and dangerous.
How different is an environment like a Colgate Palmolive versus like a Walmart e-commerce? To me, they'd seem very far apart, but I'd be curious what the connection was.
So yeah, interestingly enough, in the world of e-commerce and now with the online fulfillment, they actually recruited me for a lot of my manufacturing background
Huh.
experiences because if you think about it, in terms of you're making a product in at Colgate Palmolive, but in terms of Walmart e-commerce, you're actually delivering a package from A to B, and
Right.
you need some type of manufacturing or kind of process that automates that.
Mm.
So a lot of it is instead of you actually making a product, you're actually making the packaging and then boxing it up, and then making sure it gets delivered to the right
Right.
truck at that point in time. So there was a lot of different technologies where, for example, the way that a lot of people understand that don't even understand how a product gets to you when you order it online.
Right.
So, for example, if you go on Walmart or Amazon and you pick a couple different things out, for example, like an iPhone, an umbrella, let's say, we were experimenting technologies at Walmart that were amazing. So that we made custom sized boxes for your order.
Right.
so to reduce the amount of excess package and air there that we're carrying. So we would cube out your order and then print out a box that was exact size of your order.
Cool.
And then we were playing around with automations where before, back in the days, what would happen is that an operator would have to run around with a cart. And it's basically like a huge supermarket. And he had an iPad that kind of told you where to go. And then this poor guy would have to run in the warehouse like probably 2 football fields length. He would
Yeah.
find the items in your order and then put it into a box and then send and then seal it out and then get it shipped out. But a lot of the automation that we were building at Walmart was that we had what's called a goods to person. So then a robot would bring the items to the operator, and then the operator would just pick the
Right.
iPhone or the umbrella and then put it into that custom printed box. And then everything would be automatically sealed and taped, and then it will get automatically sorted to the truck, like the UPS truck or the FedEx truck that was leaving for that
Yeah.
particular distribution center.
It's amazing. And like with all the controversy in terms of automation taking people's jobs, I think that the one guy running around football field length trips throughout, like that's probably a job that we're happy to let go. And
Yeah, like I was that facility was in Reno, Nevada. I was out there during
yeah.
Black Friday,
Oh,
and then you know what people order a lot of?
huh.
50-pound bags of dog food.
Ooh.
And you don't want to be on the receiving end when that box is coming down. And I was on that. Like I was at the end of that line, and it's like almost like a 30-degree ramp of the box coming down, and you have to catch it. Like you just get
Right. Well, now
shoved back.
you got gravity and thrust in play, which makes 50 pounds feel like 80 pounds.
Yeah. And
Ooh.
then you're loading that truck like in a really hot environment. Do you really want to be doing that?
Wow. How much time did you spend with the Walmart crew?
So I spent about 2 years there, and then like working all the way from what we call like Gen One fulfillment centers to all the way to like what we call next gen fulfillment centers.
It's interesting the way you describe manufacturing through the lens of Walmart because it's not packaging a Johnsonville bratwurst and then sending it off to the consumer. It's the products are done, but what they're manufacturing is the process, or in this case, the packaging.
Correct.
I'm not sure I've really thought of manufacturing in that way, but that is just as important of a process
Yeah.
as an actual product,
Yeah, you have conveyors that take the product from A to B. You
right?
have a lot of processes in play. You have frontline workers that are doing a lot of the jobs there. It's really similar.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier when your mentor abandoned you to go on vacation and left you. You used the term mentor, so I'm hoping that he still imparted helpful advice outside of leaving you high and dry.
Yeah, to be honest, like I probably had learned more in that week or two that I was abandoned than probably when he was there and he would just do everything right because you had to fend for yourself.
That's good. Yeah.
Like I took away two good key learnings
Mm.
from my mentors back in the early days, and then these guys were part of the old legacy crew. They've been around forever. They've seen everything, and then they have like true wisdom. A lot of these people just I don't know, like they do treat everything as a job and then see everything, and then like you don't stick around for long enough to see how everything evolves. But
Right.
these guys have been there for at that time when I joined. They were there for 32 years,
Mm.
and I was 21. They've been working for longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
So they've seen a lot of things, and they were telling me, I think two big takeaways that I took from them. Because at a time in terms of automation, we do a lot of what's called digital transformation,
Right.
right? From manual processes to more automated processes, and there's a lot of friction when you try to implement that type of change.
Mm.
You have change from people
Right.
because they think you're going to take away the jobs. They've been doing the same thing forever and ever. They feel like, okay, what are you doing here? And it's a much more complicated system to use sometimes. So my boss at the time was like, it's three elements that have to work in harmony, and these three elements are people, process, and the technology. And you can't make successful change without each other.
Yeah.
Right? If you only focus on the technology and you don't get people on board and have the right process in place, it's gonna fail. And the same thing, like if you have the people but you don't have the right technology, it's clunky to
Right.
use,
Right.
and process wise, it's difficult. It's gonna fail. I've done a lot of digital transformation in my career, and if that concept has carried through with me forever. And then that's how I achieve successful results in any type of digital transformation that I do.
Yeah. Change management is so complex. And it's so hard, especially when it involves human beings.
Yeah, for sure. And which kind of leads me to my next one here in terms of just communication, right? Communication is a huge part of communicating the right process and communicating to the right human beings, right?
Yep.
And my mentor at that time is that if you truly have mastered a concept, you should be able to explain it simply
Yeah.
to your recipient without the intent of trying to confuse your audience.
Right.
If you can explain things simply and use analogies so that they can relate and get on board with you, it makes your job much simpler.
Yeah. It's huge. It's what is it? The explain it in the way you would to a kindergartner, for
Yeah.
example. Super simple. And it is way harder than it sounds.
It is. And that's why I said, like, you need to have good, true mastery of the subject in order to explain it simply. So then, really, for me, the combination of those two things has gotten me a long way.
On the change management front, what do you do internally to deal with various changes that you're dealing with? I'm always curious how people individually handle this kind of stuff.
Yeah, for me, I always have in my mind, I always default to number one because I'm a more visual learner, and then a
Yeah.
lot of people are also visual learners too. So I generally try to map out the existing process
Cool.
and get it out in a visual space so that I can see it. Because if you try to think about it and try to recreate in your head, you start to miss certain details.
I
But
agree.
I generally try to a visual representation of the current process.
Yep.
And then I sit down with subject matter experts, frontline operators, and say, okay, hey, what is the next to be process? And what does
Yeah.
the future process look like? And then you can map all the different savings and enhancements against that. And then that's the process part of that circle.
Right.
And then when you have the people and they're involved in creating that new process, they feel brought in. And then the technology just helps to support that. So that's how I kind of approach change is really being able to visually show the change
Yeah.
and then the savings and the enhancements that way.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. The visual piece is really helpful. I could do too much work in my head and catch myself like, no, get out, get it on paper, get it on a whiteboard or screen or whatever. And it makes me think of, I guess it was algebra class. We learned, please excuse my dear Aunt
Yeah,
Sally.
yeah,
And for people who don't remember, that is the order of operations for, okay, parentheses, exponents, excuse,
exponents,
multiplication, division, addition,
addition,
subtraction.
subtraction.
Yeah.
Yep.
God, I can't believe I remember this stuff. But I think about that a lot. I think about order of operations all the time. Just I work in marketing, so it's not a front line, but I still think about, okay, what's the order of operations? What things have to happen in what sequence in order to do this? And if it's whether it's an Excel spreadsheet or just putting it on a piece of paper, a lot of times doing that, I'm like, no, step 7 actually should be step 4. That'll never work
Yep.
because
Yep.
Casey will kill me if I do that. So I got to put that back here. And so, yeah, I'm aligned with you. And like the visual piece, I think is huge.
Yeah, it helps as a communication mechanism to other people as well, right?
Yeah.
I don't need to repeat it every single time, and maybe every single
Right.
time I repeat it to someone, it may change. So if I have always a source of truth that I go back to, and then show everyone, like it's
Yeah.
just the communication is much simpler.
So talk about the path from working these manufacturing organizations, Walmart, Colgate Palmolive, and then moving into tech organizations in a leadership role.
Yeah, funny enough, it's always been my goal to move into pure tech
Yeah.
because for me, I see the power of software and it's able to rapidly change. Right, when you deal with hardware and and automation, like it's tough because you need to design everything out ahead of time, and it takes a lot of testing and all that stuff and rigor. But in software, actually, a lot of the same principles apply where you map out a
Right.
software process flow, you optimize that flow, and then make it better for users and our customers. A lot of that methodology still applies. There are some different techniques and things like that, but again, the way I always set my goal out and I work backwards on
Right.
how do I get there. So
Yeah.
you asked me why I moved into Walmart because before at Colgate it was purely an automation play, which is a little bit of software, a little bit of hardware.
Right.
But in Walmart, it was a little bit more of a digital aspect
Right.
to it because there was a software component in addition to the mechanical pieces of like conveyors and all that stuff. But there was a lot of logic that was built into how to route things and things like that. So that was my step into the digital world with
Yeah.
e-commerce. And then from there, I made the full transition to working in e-commerce startups.
Yeah.
It was just a fully digital product. So I always I think I was always good at setting my, I had a goal and then, figure out the steps to get there. And that's how I ended up in software.
You probably don't miss spraying toothpaste all over people
No,
in a different
no,
country.
no. That's always fun. But again, like back to my limit, like there's a certain, when you have mastered it, there's a certain limit to that. And then
Right.
beyond that, with automation, there's so many things that I was doing. I was integrating automation systems to big ERP systems.
Hmm.
I was getting the data and analytics that was generated from all these automation systems so you can process it, so that you can even predict failures of things that happen. So
Yeah.
that really got me interested in the software space and then reinforced my goal there.
Awesome. We've reached halftime at the Voices in Manufacturing. So this is my favorite segment. We get to travel back in time and find out what happened on this day in manufacturing history. Alan, are you ready to play?
Yeah, let's do it.
On this day, on this day.
All right, here we go. We're going to crank up the gears and forge some knowledge, and this is how it works. I will share 3 pivotal moments that left a mark on the manufacturing industry. You have 30 seconds to answer, and if you get all 3 of them, you will win 1 million Dozuki dollars.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, that can't be redeemed anywhere, but we'll give it to you
Okay.
anyway.
Oh,
Okay,
thanks.
question number 1. I'll paste it in the chat for you. On this day in manufacturing history, 1836. Samuel Colt patented the first multi-shot revolving cylinder revolver, and the firearm could be fired multiple times without reloading. What was the major manufacturing defect of the product that made it dangerous? Was it A, if the cylinder was incorrectly positioned, it blew up? B, if the firing pin rusted, that prevented the gun from firing? Or C, if the trigger was pulled too hard, the gun would say, "Yeehaw!"
So I'm guessing it's not C because, well, probably the guy would say yeehaw. It's a major defect. I would say in terms of a revolver, if the cylinder was not lined up incorrectly, yeah, I would obviously blow up because you would shoot the bullet into the cylinder itself. A.
You got it. Answer is correct. Yeah, on the first test, Samuel Colt, it blew up in his face. So they back to the drawing board on that one.
I can resonate with that.
Yeah, exactly. I'll take toothpaste over a bullet. I wonder if that's where the term backfire originated. I
There we
have to
go.
verify that. Okay, moving on to question number 2. All right. One moment. Sorry. Okay. Question number 2. On this day in manufacturing history, in 1886, the Excelsior Needle Company was the first organization to manufacture machine-made sewing needles.
Mm.
Now, this is a very complex process. I found out there's over 20 steps in the production of a sewing needle. So the question is, which of these is not one of those steps? Is it A, stamping, B, bleeding, or C, annealing?
Let me see. I definitely think stamping is involved, so it shouldn't be A. Bleeding is usually used to let air out or like something, and annealing, I think, is a chemical process.
It's a
So
tough one.
yeah, you have phone a friend or phone a chat.
You have 0 lifelines. It's all on your hands. 5 seconds.
All right. If I have to go with it, I'm gonna go with B, bleeding.
You got it right. Bleeding is a step in many processes, but not this particular one.
Great.
I also found out that the oldest needle with an eye is thought to be over 25,000 years old, originally made from animal horns.
Ooh.
Fascinating. Okay, you're 2 for 2. This is very impressive, Alan. This is the last question. This is for all the money. Here we go. On this day in manufacturing history, in 1904, the great children's author and cartoonist Dr. Seuss was born. Now, in his manufacturing cautionary tale, The Lorax, what was the Thneed factory's impact on the environment of the truffula trees? Was it A, it improved the ecosystem by recycling unused branches into mulch? B, he created a secondary market where used Thneeds were sold for thousands apiece? Or C, it contributed to the depletion of the truffula trees, leading to environmental destruction?
Oh, I should really know this because I remember reading it to my kids a while ago,
Yeah.
but now I'm not sure in this context. Improve the ecosystem by recycling unused branches into mulch. I don't think it's that because I don't think the Lorax would be that eco-friendly. Creating a secondary market where these were sold for thousands a piece. Interesting, possibly. Contribute to the depletion of the trout species. In terms of a cautionary children's tale, I would probably go with the last choice. Contribute
Spoken
to
like
the
a true, yeah.
depletion.
Spoken like a true dad. You got it. It depleted the entire environment. I don't think I realized as a kid that the Lorax was like a super environmental book. And then as I got older and reread it, it says unless at the very end. I'm like, oh, whoa, it's super dark. Alan, congratulations. 3 for 3. And on this day, you win 1 million Dozuki dollars.
Oh man, nice. I'm gonna spend it then nowhere.
Nowhere. No, it will be deposited in your employee account in 6 to 9 years.
Okay, perfect.
Excellent job playing this segment today on this day in manufacturing history. Okay, we are moving into the last part of our program here today, and I always like to reference Office Space and ask the question, what would you say you do here, Alan? So yeah, tell us about what does the VP of product at a company like Dozuki do all day?
It's a very good question that I ask myself on a daily basis too, since I wear sometimes so many different hats. I'm gonna try to sum them up for you.
Cool.
As the head of product at Dozuki, it's my job to make sure that we build software that helps manufacturers capture and deliver process knowledge, right? So that they can continuously improve manufacturing productivity, quality, safety, and then they do that by upskilling and engaging their frontline workforce.
Yeah,
My vision is really to it's really around the frontline workforce, empowering them to achieve their full potential. I
yeah,
think when the frontline workforce achieves their full potential, the business gets all the benefits in terms
yeah,
of increased productivity, lower safety incidents, and better quality, right? And then if we can enable them to treat these jobs into a career path, even better. They have a way to progress through and then really grow in that area. And I think really through our lens of engagement, we can help to contribute to that. So I generally start off my day with it's always data driven, right?
yeah.
I start off by monitoring our product metrics. So I monitor things like monthly active
Right.
user. So how many people are using our product? License activation. Are people getting what they pay for? People pay for a certain amount of user licenses. Are they using it? Right. And stickiness, right? So are people coming back to the platform after they used it? Are we making a good product there? And all these metrics help inform me if that our product is providing value to our users. And if not, where to focus. Secondly, I generally also always talk with our customers
Cool.
because we have so many customers across different manufacturing verticals. I understand the consumer product goods vertical pretty well because I was there, but there's so many different verticals like automotive or
Yeah.
chemical or healthcare that I have no idea about, and they're
Right.
all very specialized. So what I do is talk to them and I try to understand what is their process, what are their pain points, etc. Right. So then after that, I generally meet with my team, the product teams, and then product is a very cross-functional org where we work with teams like sales and customer success to really understand the pain points and the problems that our customers have. And we really need to think really hard about our customers' problems, and
Right.
then that so that we embody our customer and that we connect with what they're going through, so
Right.
that we make great products for them. Right?
Yeah.
You cannot make good products for someone that you don't understand or you can look I don't know live through it because if you
Yeah.
don't connect with them, you can't make good products that way.
So empathy is a huge part of product development.
Empathy is everything, right? Being
Yeah.
able to connect with that person, being able to put yourself in their shoes, and then being able to go on site sometimes to experience exactly what they're going through. It's a really mind opening
Yeah.
experience, right?
Give me an example of the feedback that you might hear from a customer that is surprising or that you didn't expect to hear.
Yeah, a lot of our project is focused around delivering work instructions and capturing that knowledge. But one interesting thing that I've heard from a lot of our customers that, hey, I want to use this knowledge on a day-to-day basis and then operate against it so that my workers, they're following a step-by-step guide and they're using that guide as they're assembling the product so that we can maintain quality. They can look at things to watch out for. And then it's not only just a reference tool now, it's embodied into their daily operations. And I think that was an amazing surprise that I didn't think that
Yeah.
people would use it that way.
Anytime someone uses the word embody, like you've done the right job, that it's whatever unconscious competence or second nature, whatever term people use for it, but the fact that it's become second nature, that's what you want, right?
Yeah.
And have you got a chance to go to any facilities recently?
Yeah, I was actually just at a facility that makes gummy bears.
Nice.
And funny enough, gummy bears are my kryptonite. I always,
Oh,
like in college, I ordered a 15-pound bag of gummy bears and just ate through it.
they're the best. Are you familiar with the gummy bear cleanse?
No, I'm not.
So I promise I won't get graphic on this, but at another time that doesn't involve doing this on the podcast, go to Amazon and Google, or not Google, but type in the Haribo gummy bear cleanse. It is hands down the greatest product review ever written.
Oh my
And
god.
it's so bad because imagine eating 3 pounds of gummy bears as a way to cleanse your full body. You can imagine what the review says, but it
Yeah.
is, I read it like once a month just to remind myself. It is the funniest thing of all time. It's so gross and awesome. So I love to hear that people are supporting gummy bears.
Yeah, and then but it was so funny because that's a also a consumer product goods company, and it was so funny and so interesting that how all of my experiences, like it's reflected. It's the same exact things. We're just making, instead of toothpaste, you're making gummy bears.
Right.
I'm like, this is great, and it's also like on the opposite ends of the dental health spectrum.
Yeah.
I was like,
Maybe they work in, maybe they're like buddied up like each
yeah,
other. It's like the hot dog buns and the hot dog people, like, hey, you know what? We're not competing. We're here together. We can help each other.
yeah, and then it's like, and then that's just why the hot dog buns and the hot dogs never have the same amount, same
Oh
number.
yeah. Oh yeah. There was 100% an Illuminati meeting where they got together and said, okay, you guys are 12, we're 8. That's all we're gonna do.
Yep,
It's all part of the Fibonacci sequence, and then profits are gonna soar.
yep, exactly.
I'm gonna remember that gummy bears are your kryptonite. Are you like a Haribo guy, or do you have a particular brand?
I like Haribo the best. They mastered this texture. I think it takes a while to make because even I was at this customers. I want, like, they have a different, slightly texture, and it's a little bit off
Sure.
from their from the Haribo, and then it's just it isn't the same.
That's got to be a really hard thing to nail, like the texture of a candy like that.
Yeah,
Similar to like companies that make imitation meat, like plant-based products. That's a real nuance to get that right.
it's really, and you have to be, you have to eat how many gummy bears in a
Right.
day to know that.
I'm thinking now, maybe there's an opportunity, depending on how viral this episode goes, maybe there's an opportunity for you in a future position, a retirement job, perhaps being a tester at Haribo or something like
Cool.
that.
I'd love to get a sponsor on this channel.
Oh man, if we get this sponsored by Haribo, forget it. Like we don't want their money. Just send Alan five
Yeah,
pounds a month of
exactly,
bears. Are you
exactly.
passing the bear love to your kids? Do they also enjoy them?
Oh yeah, they love it. Right now, I try to control the portion, but I have it stacked in my office, and then every single time that they come to get it, I'm like, all right, I just ration it out for them, and then
That's
for me,
amazing.
it's unlimited.
Yeah. Well, you talked a little bit about your vision for what you want for the next 12, 18 months at Dozuki. So yeah, give us a preview. What's coming down the pike for our software?
Yeah, really. Again, it's really around what customer problems we want to solve,
Hmm.
and a lot of the challenges that I see manufacturing have is that a lot of their older workforces are retiring. The issue here is that they have a lot of tribal knowledge with them, and they've mastered these processes. Like I told you before, they've generated a lot of wisdom
Yep.
over these years, and it's not exactly by the book
Right.
because humans are amazingly great problem solvers. They just immediately improve. Like that's one thing I love about people in general.
Yeah.
And then they found ways to do things faster, better, and easier. And that knowledge sometimes is going to be lost if you let that walk out the door.
Yep.
And one of the, that's a biggest issue with our customers, that like, how do we capture that knowledge and then create it in a format that our new workforce that's just graduating or coming from trade schools, like how do we get them at the same level quickly
Yep.
before these guys retire? So that's one of the big problems that we're looking at and facing. And really, a lot of the product innovation is coming around that. How do we quickly capture that tribal knowledge and disseminate that across your entire frontline workforce to make sure that all the improvements are captured and then all the enhancements are adapted to. Everyone's trained to operate it safely and at the best quality and the most efficient
Yeah.
way for your company.
Time is of the essence, right? Especially with retirement of a whole generation coming. How do you balance the urgency with the quality? I want to make sure to get it right, but I don't want it to take too long. Like, how do you reconcile that conflict?
Yeah, this is always like the tough part in product, right? So
Right.
there's a philosophy that in many product management is that the best way to know that if you're, and this is why I love working in software, the best way that you know that you made a good product is people use it, right? So the one good thing in software is that you can release it quickly, iterate on it, improve it. It's something that you can't do in hardware, and especially for safety reasons too. Like you can't ship out a what we call minimal viable product to the market. But in software, that's the amazing thing that you can do. Test the market with some things that you think there are some pain points that you can solve,
Yeah.
and then utilize new technology, embed that into the process, train the people on it, and then see if that sticks. If that sticks, then I think Jeff Bezos says about customers, like they're never satisfied. They
Right.
always give you feedback, and that feedback now drives our product roadmap, right? So we plant the seed of how we think we can enhance your process, and then from there, if it takes off, people just naturally give you suggestions like, "Oh, okay, how about you do this? How about you make this a little easier to use, make it a little bit faster?" And then that's how we build product, and that's how I kind of balance the
Yeah.
two.
I feel a strong sense of momentum in the way you're describing this. Let's get this thing right here and then
Yeah.
build on it and build on it and keep growing.
Yeah, because the thing in software is that the longer it takes you to build something, the more riskier it is. It sounds a little bit contradictory, but it is the case because you don't know what people want, right? At that point. And you spend a year to build that particular thing and you launch it, and then it doesn't meet people's expectations. You just lost. It's just a huge opportunity cost there, and then you lost the time that you could have done to build it to what the customer is looking for. So, for example, if you've taken a year to build something and still missed the mark, and I build it in 2 months, let's say,
Yep.
I would have had 10 months of time to iterate my product to get to what the customer needs.
Yep.
And now you're starting at a 10-month deficit already, right? If you took a year to develop it. So that's my philosophy of like the momentum and impetus
Yeah.
to push products out to market. That's the only way they can build great product is that you have empathy, you know what they want, and you release it, and then they use it, and you get the data back, and you use that to improve and iterate upon your offering.
I love it. We are reaching the end of our program here today, but before we go, we'd like to do something called the lightning round and do a little creative brainstorming. So let's finish up strong. Alan, if you could take a tour of any current manufacturing facility, what would it be?
So I think with all the excitement around AI nowadays, and then all the investment, especially in the US, that's going around to manufacturing around semiconductors, I would love to see how a semiconductor and chips are manufactured. Like they
Yeah,
require extreme levels of preciseness
right.
and detail, and they have the lowest tolerance for quality defects. I would love to see something like that. It's probably one of the most complex manufacturing processes that are out there.
That would be fascinating. All right, so if you could go back in time and see any product in history made, what would it be?
Like with any manufacturing nerds, I would love to go back to see how like the Ford Model T was actually manufactured. Like, just
Yeah.
what is the inception of you
Yep,
thinking about building that? Because now it seems commonplace, like an assembly line and
right.
everything. But like, how did you even think to get there? It was like it's beyond me.
Mind blowing. Okay, if you were working on the front line at a facility, what would be your perfect music to work to?
Yeah, it really depends on the activity, right? So for some type of like repetitive tasks, like you want something that kind of stays on tempo and the steps of the process. So when I usually work, I work to like lo-fi beats so that
Yeah,
I have a rhythm to it, and then I can get into it. Yeah.
I'm the same. I love the lo-fi. It's hip hop with no words, and it's
Yep.
just like a metronome.
Yep.
It's the best. Okay, I want you to imagine you're a plant manager, you have an unlimited budget. How would you redesign the worker break room?
That's a good question. So I again, I'm since I've spent a lot of time with people on the front line too, I would focus around collaboration and communication.
Cool.
Right, so I wanted to design around performing Kaizen events or shift changes. So when we have shift handovers, the different teams need to be able to communicate together so that you have a smooth handoff.
Yep.
And really enabling free snacks or having that collaborative environment is a great way to view performance and celebrate wins with different teammates as well. So
Unlimited gummy bears is basically what you're saying.
yeah, pretty much.
Last question is, what would be your advice to someone day one working in the manufacturing industry?
Yeah, get out to the plant floor, immerse yourself in the plant floor, and be curious. When I visit manufacturers and customers, I'm always, even though I know a lot of the background of the processes already, I'm super curious. And how does this thing work? How does this thing work? And then try to get a visual again of the overall process from start to finish in your head of how this thing works. Because really, the beautiful thing about manufacturing is that anyone can have an impact on the overall process. Because in manufacturing, everyone's like driven by continuous improvement. There's no perfect process yet. There's always some type of waste in there, so that you can always think of some way to improve the process. So that's what my advice would be.
I love it. It is such a privilege to be able to hang out with you and learn more today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And I will share my favorite thing that I learned today. The longer it takes you to build something, the riskier it is.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Alan Yeung, for joining us, and everyone for listening in. This is Name Tag Scott on behalf of everyone here at Dozuki, reminding you that if you don't write it down, it never happened. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Voices of Manufacturing podcast. This show is brought to you by Dozuki, empowering the frontline manufacturing workforce. Check out Dozuki on LinkedIn to listen to past episodes and learn how your team can increase productivity and strengthen employee engagement.